the SDV, which is the software-defined vehicles market, apparently is projected to reach 400 to 600 billion by 2030. Yes, that's billion with a B. And that's a pretty hard number to wrap your brain around, considering that the entire auto care industry is about 500 billion.
I mentioned earlier that you wouldn't think that HVAC or your air conditioning would be a software-driven function, but it is in a lot of the newer vehicles.
My 2018 Dodge Charger decided to do an update while I was away from home, and I was in the parking lot far away from home, and I got in and it was like software update on the screen and everything went all like pixelated and weird, and I was like, oh my god, my car is literally melting and dying right now.
Battery technology is one thing that's changing really fast right now.
Oh my gosh.
And they're solving a lot of the issues that people are afraid of cars catching on fire. You'll see the software updates occurring, maybe once a week or a month, depending on your particular vehicle. That's changing things like how your air conditioning works in the vehicle, how your transmission modifications to fix some things. AI is really going to be a game changer in the sensor world.
Welcome back to another edition of Traction Control. I'm Stacey Miller, and we are following a lot of headlines in automotive technology just in the past week. Here are some of the headlines that caught my eye that I really wanted to bring attention to our listeners on the podcast. So, number one, the SDV, which is the software-defined vehicles market, apparently is projected to reach 400 to 600 billion by 2030. Yes, that's billion with a B. And that's a pretty hard number to wrap your brain around, considering that the entire auto care industry is about 500 billion. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. GM apparently is deploying AI and machine learning across Detroit Factory Zero for predictive maintenance. No surprise there. Lots of AI going on in the automotive industry. And communication and chip giant Qualcomm is showcasing advanced vehicle technology like AI-powered cockpits and ADAS at its Snapdragon Auto Day in India later this month. You may be wondering, what the heck does all of this mean for the automotive aftermarket? And luckily, I have a fantastic guest today. His name is Mike Tanner, and he's the Auto Care Association Director of Vehicle Technology and Innovation. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So happy to have you. Not many people know that the Auto Care Association has an emerging technologies department, and our main focus is to follow exactly what's happening in new vehicle technologies, which is a lot. You have a tall order to follow, and understand what are the risks and what are the challenges. So talk to me a little bit about what you're following right now, which I'm sure is a lot.
It's a lot, and it's changing faster than we had expected. However, we've been looking at software-defined vehicles for four to 5 years. We already saw that coming. But the whole landscape has changed since then. There was the focus on EVs, right?
Mhm.
And then a lot of the vehicle manufacturers were focusing their software-defined vehicle efforts towards those. Now, as we've transitioned to this period where EVs have kind of moved further back on the as far as the development, a lot of those software-defined vehicle functions are being implemented now on ICE vehicles. And so if you buy an ICE vehicle today, you'll see a lot of the same types of features. You'll see the software updates occurring, maybe once a week or a month, depending on your particular vehicle. That's changing things like how your air conditioning works in the vehicle, how your transmission modifications to fix some things. So those things are happening, and we really didn't expect necessarily for that to happen on the ICE vehicles. But that just shows you how quickly things change and how you have to adapt.
Those updates are happening like over the air, right? Like your car is just sitting in the garage and it gets an update.
Sitting in the garage. Typically, you can set how often you want to have them done and when you want them to happen. Early on, especially in EVs, that was kind of problematic. Just because, for one reason, because it was new and things happen. But yeah, you may come outside and your vehicle's not working because the update may not have happened. That's a little bit more rare. But those are things that we talked about a few years ago in the Emerging Technology Committee. But yeah, software-defined vehicles. That's something that we saw in our committee, and we've been talking about it and communicating about that for a long time. So that didn't catch us off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so funny. I should have called you, honestly, because my 2018 Dodge Charger decided to do an update while I was away from home, and I was in the parking lot far away from home. And I got in, and it was like software update on the screen, and everything went all like pixelated and weird. And I was like, oh my God, my car is literally melting and dying right now. Like, what do I do if this thing breaks? I'm not going to be able to get it anywhere. But it took like 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden it was done. I just thought it was so weird because I thought, oh, I need to be near my home's Wi-Fi or something like that. It just happened in the middle of nowhere, and it totally caught me like off guard. I had no clue that that was going to happen.
Yeah. Now there were stories of the events where a person had that happen and they couldn't get into their vehicle because the software update failed, and they had to try to get into the trunk, crawl through the back, to get the things they needed out of their vehicle. That was an EUV, but like I said, that was within the first couple of years of software-defined vehicles. But I mean, it's like I said, there's challenges to that, but um, and we'll see how that plays out. It seems to be fairly stable now. And I know in my own personal vehicle, it's a couple of years old, F-150 Ford. Yeah, I get software updates, and they change functions and things like that. It would be nice if we saw like software notes.
So you knew what
So you know what happened, but yeah, you don't necessarily get all of that. So it just kind of happens. But you can control that, like if you're going to be on a long trip and your car's at the airport. If you think about it, you can disable software updates temporarily.
Yeah. And I mean, it's an advantage for consumers, right? Because they know their vehicle's got the latest updated software, whatever it needs to run safely, whatever bug fixes that it's doing. Maybe it increases performance or unlocks performance. Prevents it. It presents some opportunities for the aftermarket too, perhaps, right? Because is software defined vehicles, is that one of the ways that you're able to provide fixes over the air? Or is that something completely different? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, it depends on the functionality that you're talking about. It they can provide fixes if it's software related, because if it's a software driven system, which I mentioned earlier, that you wouldn't think that HVAC or your air conditioning would be a software driven function, but it is in a lot of the newer vehicles. So they can make modifications to the how that functions, because a lot of those components are controlled by software. But other aspects of the vehicle may not be software controlled, and yeah, I mean we just have to be aware of that and try to stay informed as to what's going on or what the potential is. But that's a challenge for the aftermarket because you've got a variation in so many year, make, and models these vehicles, and they may function differently depending on what year, make, and model it is. So it's a challenge. Everything becomes more and more complex. So you need to have access to the data and the documentation, which is why we work so hard to make sure we can, as the aftermarket, have access to the data and the documentation in order for it to be repaired. Because if we don't, then the vehicle is going to have to be repaired back at the dealer,
Right.
and they have access to all that.
I mean, you bridged into right to repair pretty quickly, Mike. That was perfect.
Everything maps back into that. We can talk about any other technology, and we'll end up in that same subject of right to repair.
That's what it seems. And, one of the really cool things about your role is that you lead the association's Emerging Technologies Committee, which is composed of folks across the industry working on some of these issues. Tell me a little bit about the committee work on this topic.
Yeah, so the committee, we have a process that we've developed ever since we did the initial, actually since the Emerging Technology Committee was started, and that was for looking at um, access, telematics access, or access to data in general and communications to the vehicle, and working to ensure that going forward that we would have access to that. And so we saw what the hurdles would be early on. And Joe Register, my predecessor, had that vision, and got the ball rolling on that we needed to be proactive. And so we were proactive, and we were pushing to get some standardization for how to access data, because we knew that there would be security issues. Or security would be raised as an issue or a risk. And so we were working towards getting some standards for developing secure access, regardless of what manufacturer vehicle it was. And so that's been productive in the standards bodies, but it hasn't, standards aren't regulation. The standards aren't law. And so, but we were able to establish that security couldn't be used as an excuse, because we showed that obviously it's possible if standards can be developed. And, Auto Care Association, for those who aren't familiar, we demonstrated the implementation of all that and how it can be done on the for accessing vehicle data securely, with the vehicle owner authorizing all of that access. So we took that model of how we approach that to all new technologies. So we assess new technologies. We determine what the likelihood of that technology would be to evolving and coming into real fruition, and what the risks and opportunities are associated with that. And most of the um, new technologies, that they're both. They're not just a risk, and they're not just an opportunity. They're typically both. But we need to do that assessment. And so we look at that, and we apply the 80-20 rule, which is don't jump on this thing immediately, right? Only about 20% of these things will actually come about. And so we have to look at the timeline. So anyway, we do this process of analyzing these new technologies, and we try to address them and get our members actively working on addressing some of the risk and communicating those risks, and getting people involved in the standards bodies, and because we are a stakeholder. And that was one thing that we established through the process of working to establish some standards for cybersecurity and access to viewable data, is that we kind of got a seat. Well, we did get a seat at the table, and we have some of our members now that are sitting in the seats at SAE and ISO now, to give a voice and to explain what our requirements are.
Great.
So this worked out.
SAE and ISO are the leading standards organizing bodies, right? Like those are the people you go to for food safety standards, for cybersecurity standards, for any industry that has a way in which they operate that makes things safer, right? So that's a pretty big deal to have members from the committee on those kind of things, right?
Yeah, and actually, Ryan Frisch is actually he's just moved down as chair, but he was chair of the ADAS calibration standards committee for establishing standards for calibrating vehicles.
That's amazing. Shout out to Ryan. Shout out to the committee.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to be involved in this committee, we open up our applications in November for a 3-year term. So we have some of the most brilliant technical minds in the industry on this committee. We're very lucky to have volunteer leaders leading these efforts in standardization and calibration, right? So
yeah, we work to get representation from all of our communities, so that we have that perspective from each of those. AI is becoming an important part of what we're doing. It's had an effect on what we've been looking at. I guess 5 years ago we weren't, AI wasn't even on our map, right? But that was the same for almost no one in the world. Well, not no one in the world, but
yeah.
it caught a lot of people off guard, right? And what AI has done is accelerated the implementation of some of these new technologies that we were looking at, and we had projected some timelines, let's say 5 to 10 years, right? And they may have moved up to 0 to 2 years now. ADAS is one of those areas when these sensors, because some of these sensors are going to become AI um, powered.
Oh, wow.
To use it's not actually powered, but AI will be involved in processing the data from these sensors.
Mhm.
And something that we knew would happen eventually, but it was going to require a lot of processing and memory on the vehicle to handle it, is sensor fusion.
Mm.
So where you have a visual camera, let's say as an example, looking at the road, you'll also have radar, which that's already there. And let's say you have LiDAR also, potentially. Well, now the AI can look at all of those sensors, look at what they're seeing, and it can what's called interpolate that data,
Oh,
where it can balance it all. So you're not dependent on one of these, and so you can make this more informed decisions. It's kind of like if you using your eyes and your ears to assess something, right?
yes.
Because you have that information. So now AI can actually use all of that. Let's say if one of them's broken and it's not getting good data, they can say, well, that doesn't relate to what I'm seeing on the other two sensors.
Mhm.
So it can make those types of decisions. And it can also kind of calibrate itself based on the information it's getting from three different sensors for the same type of object and do all of that. So, yeah. And so AI is really going to be a game changer in the sensor world.
Oh my gosh. I mean, how do you even approach AI in automotive technology? I mean, I read a couple of those headlines. I thought, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. I think your group is also working on some AI education specifically for the aftermarket, right?
Yeah, we've generated the first white paper, and it's not it's the it's more than just an introduction, but we had to do somewhat of an introduction in order to get to the next step, which is aftermarket specific implementations of the AI and how it can be used to address the challenges and what opportunities are there.
Mhm.
Obviously, diagnostics, using AI to take available data on how to diagnose problems in the vehicle. That's going to be leveraged, and it is actually being leveraged today to help determine a fix for a vehicle. And but we just need to communicate that and show our members how they can implement that technology and utilize it to improve, across the board their support of vehicles. It's going to be extremely important to keep our the vehicles that are on the road today in service as long as possible. Um, the aftermarket, because of the success in what the aftermarket does, that they've done a good job. I mean, the fact that is the average vehicle is almost 14 years old, that we can keep those vehicles running, that gives us a long landing strip, right, for these new technologies. So it allows us to not kind of jump the gun on some of this. We can make smart decisions. We can invest smartly. We can look at and assess what looks like it's going to happen quickly, but we still need to keep those. We need to keep that revenue source going as long as possible.
Mhm.
Um, this might be a crude analogy, but let's see, a doctor who loses a patient, who may pass away, let's say, that's a source of revenue that's
Mhm.
gone. So just, you can think of it the same way as a car. If you don't keep it running, if you can't service it satisfactorily to your customer, then you may lose that vehicle forever. It may leave the park, and we need to keep it in there as long as possible to keep that revenue stream going. And that goes from the people who are doing the actual repair all the way back to the parts manufacturer and warehousing, because the mechanics a lot of times they're waiting on parts. They have multiple vehicles in the shop and they're waiting on parts to get there. So getting those parts timely is important, and getting a part that's they know is going to work out of the box is important. So all the things that all of the um, key aspects to repairing the vehicle, we need to be hitting all cylinders to keep these vehicles on the road as long as possible, because that gives us a long landing strip to to start approaching the emerging technologies.
Yeah, we're really lucky in that, it ices the long tail, right?
Mhm.
So vehicles are getting colder, we're traveling more miles, despite gas prices,
Yeah,
people are still driving. And we've seen a little bit of a pullback on the EV market, which I think we did a really good thing. We didn't put all of our eggs in the EV basket. It's important to be prepared and to understand the technology that's coming and prepare our businesses, but it's not hitting us as hard as originally predicted, which I think is a great day for us. Eventually,
yeah,
we're gonna get there. We're gonna have more penetration, but there are some barriers that need to be broken before we can get to
yeah.
those numbers.
But we need to be smart about it. And for instance, let's say you have multiple shops, and let's just talk about ADAS for one. Um, Cars who have some what you would think is some minor fixes that have happened in the car. Of course, you say it's an alignment. You should do a recalibration of that vehicle on your sensors after that is done. And that's an expensive prospect for a lot of shops to have all that equipment. But if you have multiple shops, you can have one of your centrally located shops that has that equipment, right? And then you move those vehicles that need that over to that shop and then bring it back to where it was. And and just the test to the aftermarket, a lot of our members are actually doing calibrations for some of the deals, and that's an advantage for our members. They should take advantage of, and they are members, and they're at all of our phone sheets, and so that they understand our needs and they understand information our issues. And they can explain a lot of the opportunities to shops and others and that exist. And like I said, a lot of our companies that the advantage of those opportunities because of the knowledge they gained. Um, so
Yeah, so much education is happening in the industry about what the risks and the opportunities are. And through the work of your group and the work that, various other industry stakeholders are doing in order to create the education, create the standardization in order for the aftermarket, to take advantage of these opportunities really is, I mean, in my mind, it's going to be a really gold mine for us because we continue to service the ICE vehicles and now you see more technologically advanced vehicles, and it continues to position our industry as this resilient industry and what's going on in the world. So really important to keep yourself prepared for the future. I need to ask you, so we talked about software defined vehicles, just very lightly. ADAS, so against driver assistance system. Advanced telematics and remote diagnostics. We kind of touched on that and how right to repair has a tie to all this technology. It's so important. But I'm not sure that people think about the implications of right to repair in a technological frame because we need right to repair for electric vehicles. You need it to in order to repair ADAS, and it positions us for the future with all of these opportunities too. So it's kind of like how right to repair, we won't get any of this stuff, right?
right, no, we have to have the data, and something that we did early on, and a lot of people are aware of this is that we pushed for, and we didn't get a lot pushed back. We just had to explain why it was important, and that was to get OBD2 ports on electric vehicles. Initially, when Teslas came out, they had then that they went away, and really the only reason that they were on there before is for accessories to plug in to get power. They weren't actually communicating data, but now there is a CARB requirement from California Air Resource Board that requires OBD2 ports on electric vehicles, and this is for yeah, and it's what we pointed out. We had meetings with CARB early on, and what we had assumed that they were going to be pushing for what we presented to them that was anything new to them, that they needed to be monitoring the health of the batteries and ensuring that vehicle owners were getting the mileage that they expected, the distance that they were expecting to get out of charge, and that was a resource because it was requiring electricity, which is a resource and a shared resource, and then they needed to be using that efficiently. Not to mention the safety issues of, temperature, better temperature, et cetera, that all that needed to be done. But, however, if we had not pushed for that and gotten that into the CARB regulations, then we would have been, cut out of the ability to get all the diagnostic information to service batteries, um, which is in the future is going to be a big deal. Battery technology is one thing that's changing really fast right now,
Oh my
and
gosh,
they're solving a lot of the issues that people were afraid of cars catching on fire because of the heat and all that. Well, there's solid state battery technology is coming that kind of takes that off the table and no longer a risk.
They must have learned from hard drives, right? I remember when you'd be so scared that you would drop your hard drive and it would get ruined, and then they came out with solid state hard drives.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
thank God.
yeah. Well, it's a little bit different technology, but it is it is making it a lot safer and we'll get a lot more life out of batteries. But AI is has a lot to do with that. Because they're using AI a lot in the development of new technologies. But getting back to having access to the data, it's still kind of daunting the ability to access through these secure gateways, even though there are a lot of people manufacturers, several of them, you can get access to some of the data, but you have to buy different tools to do that. You have to pay for different software subscriptions for all of that. There's a different process for each one, which is why we were pushing for standardization.
It doesn't seem very transparent.
It's not. It seems purposeful, but in a lot of cases, it's just that we continue to speak about the automobile and manufacturers as one entity, and it's really 26 or 30 however many it is now on DD, and they're all separate, and they're all different. It's hard to talk about them as one entity. You need to get down to this level of detail as to access data if you can and what you can get, and that may vary from over time. Also, you may be able to get some information in some period of time and it change. Um, that's why we've pushed for standardization. It makes sense. Um, so we'll see how that evolves down the road. But one thing that I did want to point out if you communicate with the vehicle is that we get a lot of pushback on telematics access to data. And in some cases, our members aren't even aware of, okay, well, why do we need remote access to the vehicle? We're not going to try to repair people our way that, it's not right there with us. Why do we can plug into it? Well, the reason we push for this is something that we ourselves demonstrated before the OEMs actually have implemented. And that's remote diagnostics of the vehicle, where you connect to the vehicle and do a scan of the vehicle remotely, not to change anything and not to repair anything, but to assess the status of that vehicle and determine how what the severity of the issue is. Like, and I'm talking about check engine light, and then looking at the check engine light, determining what's the cause, so what's the potential fix, and how severe is this? Can I keep driving it, or can I? Do I need to have it towed?
Safety hazard.
Yeah,
And I
it's a
guess that's
safety
parts I
hazard.
order now, so I have to wait 2 weeks.
Right? And so, yeah, and that was the business case that we pushed to put forward, is that yeah, you can do a remote diagnostic on it. You can say, hey, you know what, this isn't an issue. Just schedule time to come by, and we can address that as a simple maintenance issue. But you would be able to do that over the app, for instance, potentially. Now, if it needs to be towed, well, we can connect you to someone who can tow the vehicle. And what else? We can also start lining up that scheduling the day with the right mechanic that works on, let's say, transmission. We can get him scheduled. You know what? We can already get the parts in flight to be there. Okay, so that's what the vehicle manufacturers would be doing. We need to be able to compete level playing field in that regard. So we do need remote access, not to fix the vehicle, not to change it remotely, but just to assess the vehicle and to support our customers and to be able to take advantage of all efficiencies associated.
It's pretty simple, right? We're not asking for anything that we haven't asked for before, haven't had access to before. It's just the repair maintenance data, and then we were able to compete on the same level playing field, and service our customers, right? We want to provide that choice, right? You can go to the dealer if you want to, but you should also have the choice to go to an independent down the street from you, and not be forced to whichever option you use. Some crazy no.
Exactly.
Mike, this has been really enlightening. There's so much we can talk about. I feel like we could do a podcast on each one of these topics, honestly, because there's a lot, and you have a lot of knowledge, and we're so lucky to have you. I want to let our guests know about two opportunities here to kind of get engaged in the conversation, especially now. So you were talking about when a technician may not be able to find access to the tools or the data in order to repair that vehicle. Now, we don't know if that's more easily accessible, if it's being hidden, if that pricing is transparent. But in the end, what we're finding out based on survey data is that technicians are having to turn away vehicles and send them to the dealer because of their inability to completely fix a car. So they might be able to diagnose it, they might not. They might be able to install a part, but like that final last kind of step that they need to do to just safely put that vehicle back on the road, they can't do without some sort of OEM barrier, whether that's a tool or a reprogramming or getting it back to the dealer to do one of those things. So one of the things that we're asking, if you are a technician listening to this, if you're a technician or shop partners, is to help us report those instances so we can gather those examples and try to create a better way for our industry to access that data and provide a solution to this issue. So there's one URL that you can visit for that. That's autocare.org/cam repair. And you'll see our cam repair report campaign. So let us know what you were trying to fix, how you were trying to fix it, what the barrier was, and then we'll be evaluating these responses and using those to help track figure out, hey, how can we provide a solution or not? This and how I'm better communicating to letting seniors that this is a problem right now. Number two is our legislative summit is coming up, and you probably heard an amazing ad from our SVP of Government Affairs, Lisa Fauché. But I just want to reiterate, uh, Mike and the entire team have been working so hard on this issue, and this is the furthest it's ever gotten. So, in the bill in the House, we've got a bill in the Senate, and federally, right to repair has so much attention and so much momentum. And coming to Capitol Hill to tell your legislator that you need this for your business, but not just your business. It affects you, it affects your family, it affects your loved ones, it affects your livelihood. We need to tell those stories. So autocare.org/legislative summit is our event coming up, and we need as many bodies as possible on Capitol Hill to spread that message. And we make everything easy. You come to the meeting, we train you on how to talk to your legislators. If come see it's easier than you think. Listen to my podcast with Jerry Mender for a flavor of how easy it was for him. And reach out to the team if you have any questions, because it's an amazing experience to walk the halls of Congress and, exercise your American right to let your legislators know that there's an issue that's affecting you and something gets changed. So I really encourage you to put that on system. Mike Tanner, thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to more.
Yeah, thanks for having me.